Gentlemen, I'd just like to welcome you all to the special Angus Council meeting today. And before we start the meeting, I'd just like to express my and my wife's sincere thanks for all the kind messages that we have received from elected members and from officers within the council on all sides. It's really gratifying to know that we have support and that we're in your thoughts, and thank you for that very much. Dealing with cancer is not an easy thing, but having the support of colleagues, I've greatly appreciated. So thank you. Would you like to do a bit of housekeeping, Mr. McCaskill?
Yes, Provost. Just again to remind members that the meeting is being live streamed onto the Council's YouTube channel, but that the meeting is still, however, a Zoom meeting and all other arrangements are as the same.
Thank you very much. If we could deal with item 1, apologies.
Yes, Provost. Apologies from Councillors Bell, Boyd and Braze.
Thank you. You will note that there is a request for a deputation from Mr. Guild dealing with items 3 and 4 in the agenda. However, I'm going to leave that to one side. And before we move on to that, I would now like to take any declarations of interest. Remember, it's individual councillors' responsibility to declare if they feel they've got an interest or not. Thank you. Councillor Brown, you're muted at the moment. Colin, could you unmute yourself? Still muted.
Provost, just to indicate, Councillor Braze has arrived at the meeting, so in terms of his apologies, we'll just remove that from the record. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Brown's having a wee bit difficulty submitting his apology. There we are. Okay, Colin.
Yes, on item 3 and 4, after careful consideration, I'm declaring an interest on item 3 and 4 due to my involvement with the sale of Lochside and or the demolition of the same. And I will leave the meeting for these 2 items.
Okay. Are there any other apologies? Thank you. Sorry, was there any other declarations of interest? And I take it that there isn't. We now move on to the request for a deputation.
Provost, given that Councillor Brown has indicated that he would leave the meeting, I would now ask either himself to leave the meeting or the IT host to leave him from the meeting.
I've moved Councillor Brown to the waiting room for you.
Thank you very much. Now that Councillor Brown is moved, we now deal with the declaration of interest. The declaration of the request for a deputation. Mr. Guild has asked to submit to present a deputation dealing with items 3 and 4.
Provost, before we go to that, should we not be disposing of the procedural motion? Because if the procedural motion fails, there is nothing for Mr. Guild to speak to.
No, I'm going by what I've been instructed, Councillor King. Thank you very much. Is to find out if people are like-minded to agree or disagree to the actual deputation. Is everyone in agreement that Mr. Guild presents his deputation?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you for that. We would now then go on to the procedural motion, which has been submitted by Councillor Davey, in that he wants to request the council to suspend in part Standing Order 25.1 to remove the word ordinary from the first line thereof, and to suspend in part thereof Order 25.2 to remove the word ordinary from the second line thereof, solely for the purpose of allowing the notice of motion at item 4 to be considered by the council at the special meeting held today, the 19th of October 2020. Would you like to move that, Councillor Davey?
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I would like to move the procedural motion.
Okay, and a seconder?
Yes, Provost,
Alan Douglas.
I will second the motion.
Thank you. There is no debate on this, and we either vote or not to suspend the relevant parts of standing orders. Mr. McCaskill, would you like to roll call?
Yes, Provost, just so that members are all clear, given that this is a procedural motion, members should vote yes if they wish the motion, if they wish to agree to the motion, that is to suspend the standing order, and no if they do not wish to agree the motion. So we'll start with Provost.
Yes.
Deputy Provost is not at the meeting. Councillor Braze.
Yes.
Councillor Cheap.
Apologies, yes.
Councillor Davey.
Yes.
Councillor Devine.
Yes.
Councillor Duff.
Yes.
Councillor Durno.
Here eventually.
Councillor Durno, yes or no to the procedural motion?
You're muted, Councillor Durno. Yes or no, Councillor Durno?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Fairweather.
Yes.
Councillor Fotheringham.
Yes.
Councillor Hands. Councillor Hands. Provost, I will move on and maybe go back to Councillor Hands. The rest of the roll call. Councillor King.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
Councillor
Come
Laurie.
on.
Yes.
Councillor Lumgale.
Yes.
Councillor Macmillan Douglas.
Yes.
Councillor MacDonald.
Yes.
Councillor McLaren.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Miles.
Yes.
Councillor Nicholl.
Yes.
Councillor Salmond.
Yes.
Councillor Speed.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Sturrock. Councillor Sturrock. Councillor Sturrock. No. Councillor Wan.
Yes.
Councillor Whiteside.
Yes.
Councillor Hands, have you indicated yes or no to the procedural
Yes.
motion? Yes.
Yes.
And Councillor Sturrock, are you able to vote? Provost,
Yes, I am. But my internet connection is
that yes?
unstable.
Is that yes or no to the motion, Councillor Sturrock? Provost, in the absence of Councillor Sturrock indicating, could you indicate visually yes or no, unless there's a technical issue with the sound? No. That being the case, the 25 members all present who have voted yes for the procedural motion.
25 people.
Councillor Sturrock here. Yes.
Yes. That is, yes, 25. The procedural motion is carried, Provost.
Thank you. I could now ask Mr. Gill to give his deputation.
Could I ask the IT host if Mr. Guild is in the lobby?
I think it's him. It's the same username he used before, which isn't his name, but I have admitted it just now.
I think Mr. Guild is on mute.
Guild,
Is it time for me to speak?
thank you. Mr.
Are you ready
Guild,
for me to speak?
I'll tell you when.
Thanks.
Mr. Guild, I just want to say that the council have approved that you give a deputation. You give your deputation. You're allowed 10 minutes to present your case. Just to remind you that the deputation has got to be in line with what we are discussing in the motions today, and at the end of the your deputation, you will then be invited to answer questions from councillors, from elected members. So if you're ready, Mr. Guild, your time starts now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, elected members. Thank you for providing the opportunity to speak today. Today's about Lochside Leisure Centre. My interest began in mid-2018. My objectives were to help to save Angus Council, to save Lochside Leisure Centre, which, in your own officials' words, is a significant public asset, both for future generations, to save public money, some 500,000 in demolition costs, and for the public benefit. Sadly, Lochside Leisure Centre has become about so much more. We've had officials letting us all think Lochside Leisure Centre is sinking into Forth Loch, when independent engineers' reports, both our reports and your own reports, tell us it is not. Officials have continued to recommend spending £500,000 of public money demolishing Lochside Leisure Centre, yet with no good reason to do so. And the same officials have gone on to incur up to an estimated £150,000 in combined legal fees in the Court of Session, all rather than consult the public. I believe I've shown beyond all reasonable doubt certain officials appear to have both lied to you and wasted public money. I have fully informed you all as elected members. I've done the job your officials are meant to do, the job they're paid to do, and a job they chose not to do. They appear to have been quite happy to leave you uninformed and misinformed. So I say to you, my job is done. You are fully informed. I have ensured that to be the case. And it is now for you today to, 1, agree to a full public consultation on the future of the Leisure Centre as required by law, and 2, to agree to a fully independent and external investigation into your officials, their conduct, and all matters with regard to Lochside Leisure Centre. Now, as I've said, my job is done. I knew the Leisure Centre decision must have been wrong. The court confirmed it was not only wrong, it was unlawful. Does this mean advice given to elected members was also both incorrect and unlawful? Now, I understand council employees, and there are a great many good council employees, are supposed to act with integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. We all know that at best, elected members were misled, and the public, in terms of the condition of Lochside Leisure Centre. We know the decision was made to use delegated authority, not elected member or committee authority, but delegated authority to continue to spend vast amounts of money and time in the Court of Session, rather than simply consult the public. We know they've not openly and objectively passed all correspondence sent from us regarding Lochside Leisure Centre to the elected members. Now, this includes my offer of the 14th of March, which you'll all have received a copy of this morning. This was made to your Chief Executive before any costs were incurred in the Court of Session. There was never any need to go to court. All we wanted was to work with Angus Council, and all we continue to want is to work with Angus Council find a best value solution for the building. We're disappointed with continued efforts to mislead and hide poor decision making with incorrect press statements and a complete lack of communication. We have been met with a wall of silence since we won our appeal in the Court of Session exactly 2 months ago on the 19th of August 2020. There has been no apology to ourselves, to the public for the mistakes and for wasting public money. Have they apologised to you, the elected members? Have they provided you with any confidence that the same poor decision making will not happen again? Are you confident the information presented to you going forward will be correct? And will you be fully informed in all matters in the future? I believe, as elected members, you have a duty to uphold the law and represent the interests of the public that you were elected to serve. Yet, you have a council that has broken the law, as confirmed by the highest court in the land. You appear to have officials that refuse to accept they were wrong and apologise. You appear to have officials who withhold information from you. And you appear to have officials that have wasted vast amounts of public money in court, turning the Angus Council machine funded with public money against 2 local businessmen, all rather than voluntarily consult the public. There would appear to be no consequences for their actions. These officials appear to be untouchable. If there's no requirement to be accountable, then there is little hope for future decision making in Angus. And your decision today on Lochside Leisure Centre may have far wider implications. For our business, for other businesses, and for the public. If there's no accountability within the council, how can we expect now and in the future to be treated in a fair and equitable manner? And as a direct result of the conduct of certain officials, opinions will have been formed. How can future decision making in relation to our company be unbiased and free from discrimination? All because we wanted to help Angus Council. How can businesses flourish with such little regard by the council for best value? Yet the promises made by Angus Council in the Council Plan 2019 to 24 have a clear community-led go-to place for business focus. In practice, this is simply not happening. We have done all we can. Only you, the elected members, can make the necessary changes for the people of Angus. It is imperative the changes begin today with your unanimous approval of Councillor Davies' motion. Any elected member today who votes against public consultation or a full, independent and external investigation will clearly show to us all they've chosen to be part of the problem rather than part of the solution. They will clearly show by voting against today's motion the principle of being misinformed and uninformed, of lying to the public and of wasting public money is acceptable to them as elected members. So, as much as my job is done, this is now your opportunity as elected members to do your job, to act and vote in the public interest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guild. Well in time. Are we, any member wish to ask Mr. Guild any questions? Chief Executive, do you want to add anything?
Yes, Provost, I am happy to add something if members have no questions, but I think Councillor King and Councillor Duff both have their hands up. You want to take them?
I didn't actually see it. Okay, Councillor King, sorry I didn't see your hand. You're muted, Councillor King.
My apologies, Provost. I should have lowered my hand earlier.
It's okay, I didn't see it. Don't worry. Do you want to ask your question, Councillor King?
My hand was up in error, Provost. I didn't want to ask a question.
Okay, right. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I'd like to ask Mr. Guild a question. Over the past 18 months, can he tell elected members how many letters and emails he sent to senior officers and elected members over that period of time?
No, Councillor Duff, I can't. I haven't been counting them.
Just to the nearest 50 or so would do.
There would have been very few letters had I received responses to the questions answered. I don't think it's a matter of counting letters, it's more of the content and whether your officials are prepared to answer the questions. And I think that's where you should focus your concern, as opposed to simply counting letters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, well, I don't know either. I thought Mr. Gill might have been able to tell us. I know that I printed off 2 huge bundles of correspondence. I would guess there was probably 50 or 100 items in that, and that was not the complete total. So that's an interesting response. At the current moment, of course, we are going through a global pandemic, the worst in 100 years.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Dubnall.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Gild, you said you've had independent engineers look at the site. Do you have any findings from the soil from the site? Because it used to be a rubbish dump and a sewer went through underneath the building. Do you have any examples of like methane gas samples or any soil samples of anything that was taken from the actual site?
Thank you for your question. The question in relation to the site is whether the building's sinking or not. The engineers who have inspected the building have warranted, they are fully insured, they have engineering insurance, and warranted the building is good for 30 years plus. The building sits on a raft foundation, and like any raft, it moves up and down, but it isn't sinking. So, you know, the factor of gas or anything, it can be no different from before. I mean, Angus Council used the building till the day it closed. So I would be assuming there are no difficulties there at all.
Thank you. Are you happy with the answer, Councillor Donnell?
I just feel like nowadays with the landfill sites, the regulations are different from what they were 40 years ago. And people would be taking soil samples and things, looking at the soil and underneath to make sure, because lots of things have been buried under that ground, nappies, tin cans, various other things, and they can give off gases nowadays. So I just wondered if you would take a soil sample before you would actually look at the building to make sure that the ground was more suitable for the standards nowadays.
Yeah, Mr. Gild.
I would be more than happy to take soil samples if you felt it was of assistance. We put in a request 7 weeks ago, possibly, to get into the building again to check the condition of the building inside. It's obviously been left neglected for the last 2 years. I don't know what it's like inside. I have not yet been able to gain access, but anything that is required to be done to check the safety or the stability of the building, we're happy to look at to do to assist the council.
That would be great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
Provost, Councillor Moore, Whiteside, Davy and Fairweather have all indicated they wish to ask a question.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Provost. Mr. Gild, you say your job is now done. Given that this building is now a common good asset, which it wasn't before, can you tell me, does this mean that you have no further interest in doing anything with the building?
Can I speak? Is that, yeah. I think if you look back the records from the outset, I've never had any interest in doing anything with the building. I've purely been to get Angus Council to set up and do their job properly and go through the proper processes before they start demolishing buildings here, there and everywhere. As you're well aware, there is a duty on the council to provide best value, which was highlighted by yourself in the press recently. I am happy, I am more than happy and willing to donate significant sums of money to work with Angus Council to do something meaningful. And if you want to go back and read my email to the Chief Executive of the 14th of March 2019, that clearly shows that. How we've ended up in the Court of Session wasting public money is completely beyond belief. And especially as leader of council, you should be taking charge of this. It's unforgivable. I am here to work with you. I'm begging to work with you. The public want to work with you, but we need a council that will work with us. So you must look at yourselves and do so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gill. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Mr. Gould, for the deputation. I just wonder if you could perhaps outline what you think would have happened had the council decided not to demolish the building in the initial meeting.
If the council had decided not to demolish the building, they should have gone out to public consultation and decided what was the best use for the building. It's a public building, it's paid for by the public, and it's entrusted to Angus Council to be safeguarded and maintained. Angus Council are paid to do so. We should all look at the building together and decide on the best use. I very much support a charitable trust, which I would donate a significant amount of money to, and for everyone to work together. You speak about COVID. There's never been a better time. The community needs support everywhere. Forfar doesn't have a community centre. It's in the right place. It provides lots of benefits for the community, and only if we all work together, especially in these difficult times, can we achieve anything. If we continue to pull in opposite directions, we're hopelessly lost. I just want a council to work with us all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guild. Are you happy with that, Councillor Davey?
Yes, thank you.
Any final questions? Okay.
Moore on Whiteside, Provost.
Oh, right, sorry. I don't know why I'm not seeing them. Carry on, Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you, Provost. Just a couple of points of clarification. Thanks for your deputation, Mr. Guild. You're asking us to agree to the consultation. At the last meeting, I think every member of the council was happy to agree in principle to this. So it's not something new. I think we're all quite pleased to see the consultation coming forward, and hopefully we'll find a good solution. The other thing was the way you spoke, it was as if the judgment was against the demolition. It's my understanding that the judgment was against the disposal of the building. So whether the council had agreed to demolish or to sell, the court would still have ruled against that without public consultation. So it's just a bit confusing for people listening to that. And I just wondered if maybe Jackie Buchanan could clarify that that's the correct position. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteside. Mr. Gill.
Is it myself again? I thought the question was for Jackie Buchanan.
Yeah. Do you want Councillor Whiteside to repeat? It was the end bit, it was mainly the question she was asking.
I mean, for me, the court decision was that the building could not be disposed of, be sold or demolished without public consultation. So that's deemed now by law there should be public consultation. Going forward, the council don't need to dispose of it. The council could lease the building. They could do a community asset transfer. It's all about, it's coming back to us working together and having a common goal. If the council, for reasons unknown to me, have to demolish the building, I fully understand that, but you have to go and ask the public what they want. It's their building. And if we do that, I feel we do that now. We've already started doing it ourselves, and I think there's lots of potential. But the true thing out of all this, it's not just the building, it's having a council that is willing to listen and is willing to consult.
Let's stay with the subject at hand, Mr. Gill. I know what you're getting at. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the questions and thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, Provost, there's Councillor Moore and Councillor Hands.
Okay, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Provost. Mr. Gill, you said in your deputation that if members didn't support the motion, then they were part of the problem. Do you expect every member to accept every aspect of this 6-item motion? Or do you think that members can have concerns about parts of it?
I think you can have concerns about parts of it. I mean, my point is that we need a consultation and we need a full investigation to deal with everything that's happened before. There can be no sensible reason for not doing that. And anyone that voted against that would be being party to the issues that have come before now. But no, if the individual parts, you will make your own judgment on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hines.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Gill, this is just a clarification question, and because this has been going for quite some time, it may well have happened, but I can't remember. Obviously, when the decisions were taken, the council has a complaints process and it's 2-tier if you go through both. And then did you go through the public sector ombudsman route as well? Because you've said that you were wanting best value, and we've now had the problem over a number of years. There's a lot of money being spent on both sides, and there's been a lot of cost instigated by one side against the other. But had the ombudsman route been gone down, perhaps that could have resulted in less public money being spent.
Mr. Gill.
Hello. Yeah, I'm back on again. As far as I understand, it had to become a legal matter to get an interdict on the building, stop it being demolished, which would have happened very quickly, we believe. So we didn't go down the ombudsman case. What we did was we took out a legal action against the council to stop the demolition, and we immediately went to your chief executive and pleaded for her to speak with us to find a way to work together for the public benefit. We did not get the opportunity to work with Angus Council.
Okay, thank you.
That would have saved all the money.
Okay, okay. Anyone else? McCaskill?
Yes, Councillor Devine.
Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. I just wondered if you were going to let Jackie Buchanan answer the question that Councillor Whiteside asked.
Sorry, I missed that. Mrs. Buchanan, sorry about that.
Yes, I'm happy to do so, Provost. In terms of the appeal decision, Councillor Whiteside is correct. The court did not take into account the ultimate decision in terms of the merits of it being demolition. What the court said is that it was required to do a public consultation in relation to any disposal or change of use, and they determined that a demolition would be that. But as I say, they did not make any comment or any judgment on the actual demolition itself.
Thank you. Councillor Whiteside, I'm sorry you didn't get the opportunity. Thank you very much, Councillor Devine, for bringing that to my attention. Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Williamson, did you want any comment?
I do, thank you, Provost, because I think there's a number of things that have been said today about officers, and given I'm responsible for officers within the council, I think it's important for me to outline some of the points that have been made and the inaccuracy of them. Firstly, as a public body, we are more scrutinised than any other organisation that exists. So that's the first thing I would say. I then want to come on to talk about internal audit. I want to talk about Lady Carmichael's judgment. I want to talk about the Outer House judgment and also my email to members of the 21st of September. So let's just go back. I will be brief, but let's just go back to May 2018, following consideration of the report 15118 at PNR, which declared Lochside Leisure Centre surplus and agreed to the demolition, in August 2018, the Deputy Leader of the Council, as outlined in Report 36218, advised me that the administration wished to revisit that decision because they believed that they had a buyer for the building. During that month, the prospective buyer was given access to the building. His professional view in terms of the building condition was contrary to the professional views that we had had. Members then raised with me a query as to whether a sound recommendation had been given to P&R and had a safe decision been made. Now, that's quite a serious place to be, and I took that incredibly serious. And what I did was, which is quite an unusual thing, I asked internal audit to do a thorough investigation of everything that had gone before that. This was in order to reassure members. I requested a review of the process and of the evidence that led to the recommendations in Report 15118. And the scope of the review, if you want to check it out, the scope of the review is outlined on page 20 of the report 36218. The overall conclusion from our auditors, people who are with us and by their very nature independent, outlined in the report that our recording and reporting could have been better, and we've taken that on as part of our action log. But with all the evidence they had available to them, it was consistent with the decision making, and there was no concern about the recommendations by officers to demolish. The report also gave quite specific recommendations about having improved exit strategies to be developed and to ensure that we had that for all vacant buildings, because we do have a lot of vacant buildings. And when we consolidate assets, as we did in Forfar, to have state-of-the-art facilities up at the campus, we had to think long and hard about how do we create a strategy for these vacant buildings. So we've taken that on board. Reports to committee should always include a bid or a brief summary of options considered pros and cons. So given the scope of that audit leading to the full debate at Scrutiny and Audit Committee on the 20th of November, it'd be important to be clear what scope would be required for something else. So that's the first point. We've already had a significant review from our auditors that was respected, chaired by Councillor King and the Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and reviewed. So if I can turn my attention then to Lady Carmichael's decision, because I think it's important to remember that different things were looked at in the inner house and at the outer house. Now, Lady Carmichael's judgment to the issues raised, and I'll stick again to the significant ones. The issue was the council did not follow standing orders on the 7th of September 2019 in relation to the report on Lochside Leisure Centre 4319. This was in terms of the report being taken as a matter of urgency and also how it was recorded in the minutes. She found no procedural or process irregularity. This point was not taken to the inner house. The second challenge presented was that the report 4819, and this is probably a significant one that keeps getting mentioned. Report 4819 contained factually inaccurate information relating to the condition of the building. What Lady Carmichael found was there is nothing in the way in which the information has put before Council on the 7th of February to support that view. Again, this point was not taken forward to the inner house. A number of others were all rejected by Lady Carmichael on the day, including that the Council had not followed best value processes and that demolition was a costly option. So to be clear, these points were not up for debate in the inner house. The inner house looked at a technical point regarding common good. And we've heard this one played out quite a bit. And it really came down to 3 questions in the Inner House with the 3 judges. Are the buildings held by the council as part of the common good? If so, is demolition of those buildings encompassed within the terms disposal of any property? And the 3rd question was, if the answer to 1 is yes, and the answer to 2 is no, does demolition of the building and returning the land to open parkland amount to a change of use? Now, 2 out of the 3 judges believed question 1 and question 2 to be yes, and as a consequence, the council did intend to change the use. Therefore, in accordance with the 2015 Act, we should consult. Now, to be clear, previously, it wasn't because we didn't want to consult. We believed that we didn't have to consult. This was a significant change in the way we handle common good as a council. So the appeal was not concerned with the condition of the building. It was not concerned with the process followed at the meeting of the 7th of February or the best value considerations. Lady Carmichael had already given a ruling on that. So finally, to turn to my email to all members on the 21st of September, I am very respectful of our members. They do a tremendous job, a pretty challenging job in all angles, even more so at the moment. And on the 21st of September, due to the nature of some of the emails elected members were receiving and some constituent questions, I wrote to members advising them that I had a discussion with our chief external auditor, our audit director from Audit Scotland, Gillian Woolman. Now, Audit Scotland are external auditors who have been with us for 4 years, who sit in all our council meetings and committee meetings and provide an annual assurance statement to us each year. And I asked Gillian to ensure that as part of our annual audit report, to scrutinise and governance the controls and financial implications of Lochside Leisure Centre. In the email, I also included for members a chronology and links to all the decision-making papers from 2013, so you yourselves could have a look at everything that had gone on since that time. The email outlined my intention to advise a pre-consultation or an open consultation, and I think I used a school example whereby often we go out with quite an open consultation to ask people, what do you think things should look like? And the email outlined going for a pre-consultation or an open consultation before going on to a formal consultation. This was so we could gather as much information from the people of Forfar. So we recognise the decision from the Inner House and the need to consult. We respect that decision and we're going to do that. But some of the things that have been raised today by the deputation around officers and officers' reputations are unacceptable. And I hope what I've presented to you around the scrutiny and audit that has taken place since 2013 of all the decisions to do with Lochside Leisure Centre, and my assurance to you as elected members around the performance of officers is good, is sound and respected. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. Then there's no more. Mr. Guild, you've had your 10 minutes, I'm afraid.
It's just one question.
Go on.
One question. Could the Chief Executive confirm why at the Scrutiny and Audit Committee our engineer's report detailing the true condition of Lochside Leisure Centre was not provided to the elected members in its entirety for their consideration?
I honestly think that the chief exec, but I think that would have actually been considered before it was put up in front of the Scrutiny and Audit Committee, as the chief executive has said, Mr. Gill.
It was never provided. That report was never provided to scrutiny and audit. Never provided. And that report confirmed the condition of the building, the true condition of the building, and it was never provided. And the only other basis for demolition is a blank bit of paper from 2010, which has no heading, no author, confirming that the condition of the building is deteriorating. There is no one put their name to that building to say it has to be demolished or that it's sinking into Forfar Loch.
I'll let the chief executive answer that, and I think we'll draw a line on this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. I think it is important that this doesn't become a discussion with me and Mr. Gill. Scrutiny and audit were presented with the auditor's report. The auditors had looked at all the evidence relating to Lochside Leisure Centre. As a consequence, there was a full debate at the Scrutiny and Audit Committee.
Okay, thank you. Right, that's it. We'll now move on to item 4, the notice of motion, and you can see the motion, Councillor Davies' motion before you. Councillor Davey, would you like to move your motion? You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Provost. I'm very sorry to be here and in this situation. This is not a position I wish to be in, nor is it a position I think our council should have been in. And can I thank members for voting for the procedural motion to allow this discussion to happen? I know this is unusual. However, I wanted to make sure we could discuss Lochside as soon as was practical without needing to call an additional meeting. Now, I don't wish to use this time as an opportunity to attack or berate those who did not agree with using this building the first time round. It was always a strange idea to me that we should spend so much money to create one of the most expensive pieces of grass in Angus when we could have used it. And indeed, I would like to thank those who voted for my amendment at the first meeting, a majority of the administration and some non-administration. I'd also like to thank administration members who may not have voted or voted against for being willing to listen to the people of Forfar, and I hope take the right decision to agree this motion today. I also hope the SNP group, who voted unanimously to demolish last time, will agree this motion today too. Following consultations, I fully expect the people of Forfar to endorse retaining this building. The time for discussions over the process will come in the future if this is agreed. I would like to put on record my regret this decision was made as an emergency item, as councillors had little time to view the entire picture or consider the options properly, with the report given just the day before the meeting. Something I question any councillor to say was sufficient time. This full review can check whether councillors had all the information and were able to make the best decision they can. We've already learnt some areas we can improve, as the Chief Executive has outlined, so let's make sure we improve our process to the best we can. However, it's not the time to get into the particulars of this. This would be a discussion for the inquiry, and this motion permits that. The full inquiry can investigate all concerns and all issues fully, and allows us to learn. This is the least we can do. Emergency items should only be used as an absolute last resort. And if this wasn't made as an emergency item, perhaps a different decision would have been reached. Finally, there was no formal consultation with local ward members. Councillors may remember I moved a second amendment to allow more time so Forfar councillors could have on record their views heard, and other councillors take this into consideration. In the motion, changing standing orders to permit this will allow this to become a permanent feature of decision making at Angus Council. So councillors from other wards can be aware of the views of local members. And the motion records that were this to have happened before the meeting, the 3 councillors would have not supported the demolition. I'm disappointed that it's taken so long to come to this, and I'm disappointed this wasn't agreed first time round. And I'm also disappointed we ended up in the courts. I hope we take this as an opportunity for all Angus councillors to come together, admit deciding to demolish wasn't the right one, and move forward together. And I hope all councillors today will back this motion.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor McMillan Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. I am pleased to second this motion. My position on the treatment of the Forfar Lochside Leisure Centre has been a matter of public record for over 2 years now, and in fact the Chief Executive referred to it, I think, a few minutes ago. First, I could never understand how a decision by the last council to demolish the building made sense if a responsible body could be found to have a good public use for it. When you consider that the demolition was estimated to cost some £500,000, and it would almost certainly be higher now, and that decision, I'm afraid for me, became outrageous. This is equivalent to the funding of some 17 jobs for a year. How could that possibly be justified? There is, sorry, can I still be heard?
Yes, you're still being heard.
Yep. There is a well-timed article in today's Courier pointing out the costs incurred in respect of the leisure centre over the last 3 years. These costs are overstated a bit in the article, as part of the rates bill is recoverable from the Scottish Government. But the article demonstrates clearly the huge saving from not demolishing the leisure centre. And it demonstrates the need to work with local people to find a use for the building. Demolition was an appalling decision when made by the SNP administration 7 years ago, and it would remain an appalling decision in my view now. Secondly, I support an independent external review, but not as some type of retribution. I support it as it may cast light on the logic behind the initial decision to demolish, the decision taken by the last council. Third, I have always believed that consultation with local electors provided the way forward on this issue. It is now a legal requirement. The court on this has given us a clear and, in my view, an absolutely right way forward. Finally, I applaud Councillor Davey working with Councillors Brown and McLaren for having the courage to bring forward this motion. He is acting as a true representative of the people of Forfar. I'm pleased to second the motion. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Just got that in time. Right, questions? Any questions, Mr. McCaskill? I can't see any hands.
Well, there's a number of hands showing, Provost. I'm not sure if it's questions or anything else. It's Councillor Braze, then Laurie, then Devine, then Duff.
Okay, Councillor Braze.
Yes, thank you very much, Provost. This motion is before us today. We've all had time to look at it, but all I'm hearing is a pre-assumption almost that we're going to be knocking down the leisure centre, or we're not going to be knocking it down on the result of this motion today. That's not what's in the motion at all.
Well, what's the question?
We decide whether we agree to this motion or to amend it, and the motion is about many other things, but not much at all about whether or not it should be demolished. That's not the nature of the motion.
Well, the motion there you could see before you, and thank you for your comments. Councillor Laurie.
Thanks, Provost. Not a question for me, just a comment. I agree with most of what Councillors Davey and McMillan Douglas have already said, and I agree with the sentiments of this motion as well. It's important that local decisions are made in consultation with local people. That's why I originally voted against the demolition in line with the majority of Forfar councillors, and I agree with the motion today that moving forward we should have a public consultation about the future of the centre, and local members should be involved in the design of this consultation. I think all of the proposals in this motion are well measured and they represent a positive way forward.
Yeah, but remember, questions. Councillor Devine.
Mine's not a question either, Provost. If I can make comments, I've got several comments to make.
You want to make a comment? Go on, I've allowed one.
Yeah, well, actually, to me and my group, there seems to be little reason for this motion coming forward today, especially because it's actually supposed to be a special council meeting about the Tay Cities deal, and I would have thought that Councillor Davey, as economic development spokesperson, would have seen how important that was to the whole of Angus. Despite that, he's chosen to bring a motion which encompasses requests for actions we already know are in progress, as the Chief Executive has pointed out. And we, as a full council, have agreed to them. I'd just like to go through them. I won't go through all of them, obviously, because I don't have the time. But I mean, we've already been told by the Chief Executive that an external review is going to be carried out by Audit Scotland. When the decision was taken about the leisure centre, the building wasn't common good, but it was an asset of the general fund, and therefore all councillors had to be involved in the decision taking, not just the Forfar councillors. In number 3, I have to say that Councillor Brown didn't actually vote on the demolition of the leisure centre because he declared an interest, as he did today, and left the meeting. So there is no record stating that 3 Forfar councillors did not support demolition. I mean, I have an article from the Courier in which Councillor Brown says that he wants the leisure centre demolished as quickly as possible. But, you know, everybody can change their mind, of course, but it doesn't sit well in this motion exactly because it's not quite true. The Chief Executive has stated that a report will come to full council in November, itemising the way in which consultation or engagement is going to be done. So again, why are we here? Mr. Lorimer.
The question about bringing up at the special council was put through the legal and done properly, and that, you know, that is it. And they may well.
I understand that, Provost. I understand that he's done it legally and all the rest of it. I just think it's a bit erroneous.
Yeah,
I want to have a debate.
It's been done properly as far as that is concerned, and I did take your comments about what else you said. Okay,
Mr. Lorimer has already stated that Finance Department will be looking at how to deal with the common good. Right. So, you know, out of the 2 asks and 1 commitment, all 3 have already been agreed by all of us. So why is it coming forward today in such a rush? I would suggest perhaps there's an election coming up and Councillor Davy is standing.
Well, I don't really
understanding on his part, and I hope the administration is aware of that. You don't like to have party politics in the council, but you have allowed it to go today, big style, and unnecessarily so, because we have agreed to everything.
I think your point about the election, if you delayed it, it would actually be getting closer to the election. I think it would have more of an impact. So really, the motion was put forward. It was checked through Mrs. Buchanan with Mr. McCaskill et al. It was agreed that it could happen, and I was happy for it to be added, and that was it. There's no you know, there was no great rush on it. It was just that it's time used to do it now, and that, you know, there's no sort of shortcuts. It was done properly, and that's it. I did take your points. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Like Councillor Devine, I was going to draw attention to point 3 in Councillor Davies' motion and point out that, let's be frank, Councillor Davy was being a little bit economical with the actuality, because Councillor Brown did not vote in the February meeting, and indeed he was reported by that fine Forfar journalist Janet Thompson that he wanted the leisure centre demolished as soon as possible. So I think that point was perhaps, let's just be kind and say it was hearsay rather than fact. I had a question, or I have a question for both Councillors Davy and Macmillan Douglas, and they're referring to a decision taken in 2013 to use their words to demolish the leisure centre. I don't think that's accurate. What was put in the budget was an allowance to knock it down, and I think that was a prudent decision at the time. The question I have is, do they think spending £35 million building a new school, a new swimming pool and a new sports centre for Forfar, and I will point out that Forfar has the best school in Angus, it has the best swimming pool in Angus, and it has the best sports centre in Angus. Was that a good decision or a bad decision, Councillor Davy?
Councillor Davy.
you, Provost. Would you like me to address all the points which have been raised, or is this sum up, or just so I know? I'm happy to sum up at the end all the questions that have been raised and why I support this motion.
The question is quite simple. Do you think that that the Forfar school, which is one of the best in Angus, and the leisure centre was a good decision or a bad decision? I don't know exactly where Councillor Duff's coming from. But
I think new facilities in Forfar are fantastic, which is why I support maintaining this leisure centre to find a new facility for people in Forfar and Angus. Yeah, okay. But I've also got points to sum up at the end, which I'll raise and address points of Councillor Devine and Councillor Duff.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments, Mr. McCaskill?
Councillors Cheap, Moore and Fairweather, Provost.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is it me, Provost, or who's going ahead?
Sorry, I go ahead.
Right, okay. First of all, just as a comment here, I totally empathise with a number of the points that Mr. Gill has brought forward today, as being one of the people in the past who, again, totally disagreed with a cost of £500,000 to demolish Lochside Leisure Centre. Whether it was right to be demolished or not, I just objected to the use of public funds to that extent at the time, and my vote was recorded as such. However, that said, you know, upholding law and the words that were put there representing the public, accountability and a duty of best value by the Angus Council is absolutely correct. But, you know, where I accept these words as being our responsibility, what I don't like is having words being put in my mouth at any time at a council meeting. I was happy to vote for the procedural motion, as that is democracy and it gives democracy a voice, which is absolutely crucial for this council. However, I agree with what Councillor Devine has just said about we're already going down the path of review and public consultation. So why was there the need for this motion to come to us today? It's already had holes blown through it because of number 3 is completely incorrect, clearly. So that immediately makes me think, should I be voting for this motion or not? Because it's inaccurate. So that gives me a concern. And, you know, having been, I've got to have a wry smile, because having been accused by parties within the administration who are pushing this as being accused of political grandstanding in the past, well, this is the classic case of political grandstanding by Councillor Davey. It's, you know, elections coming up. We can see him in the press. He's all over the press like a rash, trying to get his name out there. And this has just been a classic case for him to try and he'll come up saying, no doubt he'll claim success in achieving all of this, when really as a council we're better than all of that, and we were heading in this direction anyway. So there are certain elements, certain parts of the 6 elements in this motion which give me a concern, to be frank. Had he broken them down and focused on the main parts, it probably would have gone through completely. But there's 6 parts there, and I'm not sure I can support it because they're factually incorrect.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheapman. I think the point you made about Councillor Davey, I mean, that's conjecture on your part. And as I said to Councillor Devine, I think if he'd left it till later, he would have got more kudos out of it, but that's by the by, completely irrelevant. We now have Councillor Fairweather.
Hello, Provost. Thank you for that. No, I'm not right. I'm not going to go against this motion today. What I will say, though, is that I do welcome what Mr. Gill said, that the fact that he would put the notion of a trust for Forfar Leisure Centre in the public domain. However, will that be straightforward? And I have my severe doubts. The building is now common good. It wasn't before, it was on common good land, but it is now common good. So we would have to find out for a starter if putting a trust in place is actually possible. We also had the words community asset transfer thrown in. My thoughts are again on common good ground. That would probably be a near impossibility. as is selling any part of right of common good ground. That wouldn't be just something that would have to go in front of the forfeit people. That's something that would have to go in front of a sheriff, and the likelihood of that ever happening is nigh near and impossible. This will go out to consultation now, and the people of Forfar will be asked, what do you want to happen with this building? But that's easy said. They can come on and say, I'd like it to be a gymnasium, I'd like it to be a cinema, but who's going to do that? Who is going to put the funds in to do that? Who is going to take on the liability of this particular building? And I have a fear, a real fear here, that this building will be still sitting in the next 2 years, just before I retire, and it'll still be empty. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fairweather. Mr. McCaskill, are there any other comments or questions?
Yes, as previously indicated, Councillor Moore.
Say again.
Councillor Moore.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Provost. I think this motion is slightly disingenuous, as some of it's already been agreed to happen. I generally support Mr. Gill's comments, but as I said to him, there are aspects of the motion that I disagree with. In item 2, that the decisions relate to common good buildings, that members of the area should be consulted beforehand and their views taken into consideration. Well, I would have thought they would be, and if they aren't being kept up to track, then they should be asking the question why. I think item 3, I don't know where courage comes in, as referred to by Councillor Macmillan Douglas. I don't think that it takes a lot of courage to put a notice of motion in. And in item 6, asks that this council devise a new way of accounting to ensure a fair treatment. Is Councillor Davey actually saying that our financial regulations, which control the accounting in this council, are unfair? And if so, would he like to come forward and talk to the rest of the council and explain why they're unfair? Because I think that is a slur on our officers. I think that we need to say there is a problem here, we've got to deal with it, but we have the processes, standing orders, there is already a process there for dealing with it, and that is that it's dealt with by the Director of Infrastructure. The finance is dealt with under financial regulations. Okay, there needs to be a consultation. We could have asked for that consultation, but that's already been agreed. On the subject of the consultation, how many people are actually going to respond? We know the normal result that we get. Very few people will actually respond, and those that do are likely to be those who wish something to be done with it. The rest will go along and say, well, it's nothing to do with me. But yes, I think we need to agree this motion, even if we don't like parts of it, and just get on with it and deal with the matter.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Mr. McCaskill, any more? Is that it?
Yes, Councillor MacDonald.
Sorry, Councillor MacDonald, where are you?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, just a quick comment following on from the comments of Councillor Moore, Councillor Cheap, Councillor Devine and Councillor Duff. The motion itself, in principle, support each element, but I think has been shown, and as we know that these motions, it's up to the Provost to determine if they're competent or not. There's been multiple members here question the accuracy of the figures in the motion or the accuracy of the accounts in the motion. So even that's been questioned, the Provost has clearly declared this has been a competent motion. So I think from my side of the fence, we would have to look to support in that.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor MacDonald. And remember, the decision on competency is not made by me alone. I take advice, as I mentioned earlier on, from the legal officers from financial officers before a decision is made. But you're absolutely right. Thank you. Anyone else?
Councillor Miles.
Councillor Miles. There you go.
Yes, Provost. First of all, there hasn't been an amendment put, so there will be no vote on this motion because there's no amendment to vote against. But a comment I'd like to make is I'm pleased that the consultation is going ahead, and it was always going to be going ahead. So I'd like to move on with this. I think this has been dwelling far too long. I missed the meeting in February because I had a health board meeting at the time, or I would have been voting in favour of keeping the building up. But at that time, I would like to support the officers. They were acting on advice they got from a surveyor that said that the building was unsafe. If they decided to retain the building with that advice, they might have been going against what was in the public good. So they were only acting on advice that they were given. So I would refute some of the criticism that was made of the officers and some of the deputation. But I'm glad that the building is still there. I'm glad something can maybe be done with it. And if the survey say it's safe, I'm happy that it's utilised in the future. So, and also saving the cost of demolition. So let's move on. Let's learn from any mistakes that were made, but with no recriminations, and move on in a positive manner. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it, Mr. McCaskill?
Mr. Cochrane, Director of Infrastructure, has indicated he wishes to speak, and after that, Councillor Davey has the opportunity to sum up.
Sum up, absolutely. That's coming to the summary, but okay, Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you, Provost. If I can just come in on perhaps that last comments from Councillor Miles and some of the earlier queries around the engineering reports, if I may, please. Just to make sure that, as others ask, that committee are appropriately informed. We haven't had an engineer's report saying that the building is unsafe, and we've never said in any of our reports that it is unsafe or in danger of any catastrophic collapse. So let's be clear on that. What we've talked about throughout is about the long-term serviceability of the building. And given that the building was unoccupied and no known need for council offices or services to occupy it, then it was about what the future of the building would be. And that was when we brought forward the May 18 report. The subsequent internal audit on that was about that decision, not necessarily, again, about whether the building the condition of the building. But the condition of the building was absolutely part of the discussion in February 2019. And in the report that you received on that day, you were given what I believed was a balanced view on the condition of the building, both from the perspective of council and our reports, and the perspective of Mr. Guild. And Lady Carmichael, in her judgment, ruled on that. And we acknowledged that there was a difference in report 4819, that there was a difference of opinion in terms of the future sustainability of the building. And she acknowledged that there was a difference of opinions in terms of the service life, with uncertainty over the foundation stability and ongoing maintenance and revenue costs. She went on to say that the report author, the report was in my name, so if you like me, was entitled to summarise the material for elected members in the way that he did, was entitled to characterise the material as reflecting uncertainty regarding the stability of the foundations and to identify ongoing costs of maintenance, was correct to state that problems had persisted over a protracted period, and was entitled to characterise the available information. So at the end of that, she did not consider that there was anything that was inappropriate, and that, as I say, was the ruling of the Outer House. I hope that helps inform members and gives you some clarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Cochrane. Councillor Davey, sum up.
Yes, thank you, Provost. Just to sum up, I suppose that there's a lot of points being raised, but I suppose my initial point is to ultimately thank all councillors here for agreeing to the motion, as there's not been an amendment. And I do find it strange some of Councillor Devine's comments that she doesn't want it discussed today. I do wonder how much of this is because Councillor Devine and Councillor Duff both sit on the board of Angus Alive, so have an interest in other Forfar leisure centre and are worried about.
You've got to be careful here, Councillor Avey, because I'm sitting on the board.
No, I understand, Provost, but the reason I brought this forward at the special council meeting is we took the decision in private recently not to take this to court any further. There was little further information coming forward from Angus Council. All of the items detailed today are not a full public record, and I believe the public do deserve the right to know what our plan of action is. And by bringing this motion here today, we put on public record what we plan to do, and I make no apology for that. This meeting today allows us to address the issues that have been raised for us. If Councillor Devine thinks this is coming in a rush, we've had 5 times more time to look at my motion here today than the initial decision we had to demolish it. This is a competent motion which was passed through legal and financial to make sure we could look at this at the soonest time possible. Councillor Devine and others are aware that since the decision was made, I have campaigned against the demolition and to make sure that there is full public consultation. I brought this motion as soon as was practically possible without holding additional emergency meetings to assure the public could be informed and involved at the soonest possible moment. I've campaigned against this because this is what the people of the Forfar want to happen, and it is simply the right thing to do. I did this before I was selected, and I have done since being elected. Perhaps the SNP are merely attacking my motion and points to distract from the unanimously backed demolition. I raised these points over the Forfar councillor comments because you will remember my amendment to ask for Forfar councillors to have their views recorded was rejected first time round. Should this have happened before the meeting, it would have been public record over these issues. Changes to standing orders have been discussed and are included in this motion. Councillor Moore addresses the point that Forfar councillors should have been consulted as this building is on common good land. That is the point the change in standing orders addresses. Forfar councillors were not consulted prior to this decision being made first time round. The change in standing orders means that in future local members will be consulted. Councillor Moore's second point related to comments regarding the cost of the demolition. The motion wording to ensure a fair comment was taken after discussions with the financial department to ensure it was competent. Part of this is because I personally think that the money that we have saved should be spent on transforming the building, but this was not considered financially competent. This building has now been transferred to the Common Good Fund rather than the General Fund, a decision that has been the result of us ending up in the courts. The fair accounting process will respect this, so the public of Forfar will hopefully not end up with the full costs of this. My main issue is this, is if we had made a different decision earlier on, we could be in the process of transforming this venue already. All of these issues would not have happened. And despite criticisms again here today, no councillor has opposed any of the items mentioned in the motion. So overall, regardless of the discussion we've had, I do welcome their backing to put on public plan. Thank you, Provost.
Okay. Colleagues, we've had is the motion agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now go on to item 5, which is the possible exclusion of the public and press. Colleagues, are we happy to?
Provost, could we ask the IT host to allow the Deputy Provost back into the meeting to just consider item 5, please?
Yes, we could wait and get back Councillor Brown, and there will be a time lag before we move into the new venue onto Teams. Have we all agreed that we move on to Teams? Okay, thank you.
Provost, Councillor Brown needs to be admitted to the meeting before we go into private.
Councillor Brown has just been admitted to the meeting.
Provost, members are all present. You can decide whether you want to exclude the public and press formally.
Okay. Just once again, just to remind you, we are moving on to Teams, and we would exclude the public and press from the next item, agenda number 6, which is on green paper. We're all agreed on that.
Agreed.
Thank you.